I have the
Chinook days.
Today is the start of Chinook days. How appropriate
is it?
Yeah.
Oh, how funny.
For the week of Chinook days.
Oh, that's funny. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
We're still messing around getting ready. It's a strange time, so thanks for being here. For those that are going to be here.
Okay, here's Shelly's announcements.
Oh my gosh, she sent you announcements. She's amazing. So I'm eating a snack. My last food was a Ruffles bag, baby Ruffles bag of chips, and some kind of fudge dipped Oreo thing I got in whatever on the plane.
On the plane.
And I have not eaten since then. Well, I had it anyway. Starving. So excuse me for eating for a minute.
What's fascinating about traveling to Canada, for those of you who have done it, I've done it several times. Rachel, I think, has done it several times. It's more arduous than even getting overseas. And I'm not joking you. Like, I remember thinking when we flew to Ireland a couple years ago, I was like, man, this is easier than getting to Toronto. Mm-hmm. And I don't love to like drive long distances, but I think it might be easier to drive to Toronto, Canada from here.
And you don't get the perks. Like on a flight to Ireland, they give you food and drink as much as you can, and they like just fill you full of things, all delicious things. On Canada, they're like, it's basically domestic. So you don't get any fancy planes, you don't get any fancy food. You still have to buy everything. I'm like, it's an international flight. I paid for an international flight.
Yeah, it's
anyway.
It's a fascinating experience. We are not trying to be first world ninnies and whine about our awesome life.
First world ninnies, totally.
But it's fascinating that it actually seems harder to get to Canada than it does really even overseas.
Well, especially where I was in Kelowna, which is literally in the middle. There's nothing else there. I mean, it's only a town of like 100,000 people, and it still shows up on the national map of Canada because there's nothing else there. It is the big city in the area. I mean, it's adorable. And turns out it's like the Napa Valley. Like there's Ferraris running around town in the summer. There's like a huge amount of money in the Kelowna Valley, the Okanagan Valley.
Valley.
Yeah, doesn't it just roll off the tongue? It's like Okanagan. I like it a lot.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sounds like the head of an oak tree. Okanagan.
That's
how I'll remember it.
They actually have some kind of Loch Ness Monster situation.
Oh
God, I was gonna remember it. It's a weird name, something go. Anyway, it's never been recorded, but there's stories of it existing.
Oh, I actually kind of look like Wayne's World today. I'm ridiculous.
For those children of the 90s,
yes,
in the crowd.
Okay. So
announcements.
I'll start with Shelly and I attended the What's the Buzz at the Joy Center in Black Hill State, and had an opportunity to hear Miles Beacom be interviewed. He is the namesake for the Beacom School of Business at USD, the Beacom something I think at DSU, and the Beacom something at SD School Mines. Anyway,
wow.
So he's the president CEO of Premier Bank Card. Really, really genuine guy. Nice of him to drive over to Spearfish from Sioux Falls to spend an hour of his time. And it was full house. Tons of people there. Nice. So that's good.
But he had lots of people there.
Yeah. So that was really fun. Thank you to Steve Meeker and the BHSU folks for putting on that event. That was fun to go to. And I will say, Shelly and Rachel can attest to this, I don't say that about going to social events. So I was pleasantly surprised. Okay, Rachel returned from Canada.
Barely live.
I was in Rapid yesterday, met with a client.
Do we have the Spearfish is in the running for the big thing on the list?
I think it's in here, yes.
Small Business Revolution. Spearfish is one of the top 5. We're currently in the 3rd spot.
Yes.
So it means we need more votes, I guess.
We need more votes. You can vote from any device. You should vote from all devices. It's and you can vote from anywhere in the whole world. I saw I don't know how this happened, but they got Gilbert Gottfried to do a little, you should vote for Spearfish, South Dakota. You know, Gilbert Gottfried's the principal on.
Yeah, he's the parrot in Aladdin.
Yes, mm-hmm. That guy's voice, the parrot in Aladdin. Anyway, he did a little spiff for.
Well, I tell you, I got a sponsored Facebook ad from one of the towns, I think the town in Washington State.
Oh.
So people are spending a lot of money spreading the word beyond the community.
Oh, well, let's beat those cheaters.
Right?
We're all about doing things organically. Anyhow, yes, you can go to Vote for
Not
Spearfish.
smarter, just harder.
Not smarter, just harder. True to South Dakota nature. Voteforspearfish.com.
We'll put the link. We'll have Shelly put the link in the comments so you guys can find it easy.
Yes. Junior Achievement Cornhole Tournament is tomorrow. We've got some teams signed up. We're excited to host the first. Oh, look at Shelly's listening. Gosh, you're so good. First ever cornhole tournament that will be hosted in the Deadwood Mountain Grand upstairs where they have all those awesome concerts. So please come join us. If you haven't registered, you can do so online. Shelly can put that link in the comments too, since now we know she's listening. Or you can register right there. Either way is fine with us. We'll be happy to see you. It's $50 for a team of 2. It's going to be lots of fun. Starts tomorrow at 9. Registration between 8 and 9.
And if you're good, you get to play all day, right?
Yes. Till the very, very end. Cash prizes, folks. Cash prizes.
And that's what I want to know. How much can I win?
I don't remember.
But it's cash.
It's cash, though.
Nice. You can spend it right there at the casino.
That's right. I'm sure they would love that.
Right.
We are closed on Martin Luther King Day. Closed, whatever that means. We're
all working, but just not physically, intentionally open.
Yeah. And then, okay, my kids are messaging me on my phone. Let's see. Rachel's going to Roanoke in Virginia.
I am. I have a week at home, and then I'm off to Roanoke, and then straight to San Francisco from there. But better, more fun news is local news. Is that Cappy's big unveiling of his sculptures tonight in Custer at 5:00. So about 2:30, I'll be heading out of town to go do that thing.
Cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be really fun. The bark beetle burning is this weekend.
Awesome. Okay, so the weekly planner writing prompt. What is one aspirational goal you have for this decade? Ooh. Think big. You have a decade. That's like 10 years.
I can't even
think about I think about my last decade. I had 2 children, got married and divorced. No, that wasn't all in one decade, but
it was divorced in one decade. Well, my challenge with this kind of thing is that like 10 years ago, I had no idea I'd even be owning my own company.
It's true.
So it's like, that's a long time especially for a chaos tolerant person to have some kind of strategy in mind.
Well, maybe make it general.
Yeah, right.
Don't be too specific.
I would like to retire early. I guess I'd like to be retired by the end of this decade.
Yeah, I hear that. Okay, so
however that looks.
Use every line in this week's Gratitude IX prompt box to describe it, and that's on the bottom right page. If you need direction or inspiration, reference pages 138 through 140 in our book. Okay. And then the poll questions, she'll even put those in my email. Good for her.
Wow, she's so great. I had something else come up that I wanted to mention. When I was talking about this weekend, we have the sculpture thing, pine bark beetle. Oh, there's something else. What is it?
You had something on the calendar about a CC.
Oh, that's what I wanted to say. QWIP is the Women in Physics. The conference for undergraduate women in physics is at Black Hills State University this weekend. And I'm speaking twice, once on sort of understanding what kind of role you should look for after college based on your personality assessment or your culture type assessment. And then also sort of what's next. So how do you, at the end of the conference, they're having me sort of close with a talk about how do you plan? What's a good way to plan knowing that you're going to be going through these big transition phases and what suits you based on your culture type. So I'm going to be giving 2 talks tomorrow, which I will be creating this afternoon.
All right. Awesome.
That's why it's on my mind because I got to do the things.
I see. Yes, that is important.
Yeah. So I'm participating in that this weekend. So it's a really cool thing. It's literally people from all over women from all over the US, women and undergrad students are coming, women in physics. So it's pretty cool.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Huh. All right. So on to the matter at hand. This week we are talking about toxic high performers. So these are actually the people that are kind of, well, I think I'll speak for both of us, our favorite to talk about. Because these are the people that I want you to imagine yourself saying these words out of your own mouth, because you've said them, I guarantee you. Well, nobody really likes Alice, but gal, she just turns in some crazy high quality work. Or she has got the highest sales of everyone on the team. Or, boy, she is so hard to get along with. I try really hard not to cross her.
But she gets so much work done.
She gets so much work done. She can do the work of 3 people. Sound familiar? That's because you've said it
1,000 times probably.
Yeah. And, we do put up with a lot of that because at the end of the day, our performance as leaders is typically measured by the company, by what we produce, not by how great of a leader we are. And so it's an easy sell in our own mind to keep those folks around. The reality is we have no idea what we're risking by keeping those people around, or what's more, because everybody always jokes that Meg says fire everybody. Maybe you don't fire them, but they need to be managed. And so what are you risking by not?
They need to be held accountable.
Yes.
In a different way.
Held accountable, period. Most of the time we don't hold those people accountable. Today we'll kind of talk through, what do you do with those toxic high performers? How do you know if you have one? And how is it actually damaging the other people in your organization? And yes, it's happening. What do we do about it? So first question. Everyone is a little bit scared of this question. I think that's why it didn't get any votes. We should start with that one, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one.
How do I convince myself that it is worth the effort to address a toxic high performer? My answer has a swear word in it. Oh, are you kidding me? Insert the swear word wherever you think it's appropriate.
Well, I think the thing that people don't do, I think that the reason that people don't do it is that, they kind of know that this toxic high performer is toxic, but dealing with it might mean bigger fallout. So like if you're driving everybody crazy, but you're kicking ass at what you do, me trying to deal with that means that you're now not going to theoretically be as good of a performer. And that also means that maybe nobody else will be either. So I think from that perspective, it's like, well, at least something's getting done, and I don't want to break that part of it. So I think that's a big piece. And I think the other thing is that it's scary. What if they leave? I mean, I think that's a thing. If I approach a toxic high performer and I say, listen, we love your work, but you're creating this really stressful environment for everybody you work in, and we need to talk about that, they could quit. And then what? Then your best performer's gone. Also scary. And frankly, third, they might yell at you, and that scares a lot of people.
Yeah. I think I had a conversation about something like this yesterday with a client. And I think a good thing to think about is, what is your culture type? Because if you're a fixer, you're probably thinking, you're a team-driven person, and you might dip a little bit down into stabilizer and say, hey, listen, the team gets along. This is just part of who we are. Everybody knows not to mess with Alice. And that's just part of who we are. So this is how our team works and how we jive. And, it's not causing that much of an issue. So I'm just going to let it be, because you're chaos tolerant and team-driven. You don't really want to upset the boat. And so that might be the reason you don't do it. If you're a stabilizer, you're not going to upset the boat, period. Doesn't matter how much you hate Alice.
That confrontation is terrifying.
Yeah. And so you're just saying, oh, I'd rather just I only have to be around her for 8 hours a day. I can take a lunch break away from the office. I can shut my door. You sort of back out of it in all of your own ways.
By managing it for yourself.
Yeah. If you're an independent, you say, don't care. That's not my problem. And if you're an organizer, you say, listen, as long as Alice doesn't get in my box, I don't really care. And then when she steps in your box, you shoo her out and then neatly tidy your box back up and you're fine. So all 4 culture types have a way that they deal with the toxic high performer. And if you think a little bit about the ways that you're dealing with that person, And then the things, these sort of the excuses you're making for them, or the ways that you're changing, like Rachel talks about walking in a different door and all the way around the office to get to your own office because you don't want to walk in front of that one door of the person you can't stand or you're scared of. Think about how much time you are spending or wasting on that person and the energy you're donating to them. And then think about how much that's impacting your whole team and how much energy they're wasting or potentially donating to that person. And then you'll start to think about, well, maybe this is worth addressing, because there's a lot of energy. And this is the exercise. When I was an HR manager, I went through, if a supervisor would bring something to me and they'd say, well, I don't really want this guy to lose his job or, be suspended or get in trouble. It's just, man, he's constantly, stirring the pot with all the people on our team. And so I'd say, well, how much time do you think that's costing you? Blah, blah, blah. And when we'd get to the end of it, almost every time it was at least a quarter, if not a half of every shift with these people was spent. And so when you really do that mental homework, you start to realize it's worth putting the effort into it. You don't want to, it's scary. And for all the reasons and excuses we make not to do it, we don't do it, but it's worth it. So don't shit yourself into thinking it's not. Sorry, Shelley.
Well, and I think the other thing to think about is sort of what's the root cause of the behavior too, right? So what I find is a lot of times when a chaos person is put in a order tolerant job, the job itself is not dynamic enough. And so then they stir the pot to create that chaos that they need. Because you've worked with these people, right? Like, you're like, it's almost like they can't operate without the drama. What that tells me is they're not getting the drama in the job, in the dynamic nature of the work they're doing. And so then they create it in the people around them. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And so it's not only hey, I'm going to scold you for not being a team player or whatever it might be. It's what's the root cause of why you're causing the drama all the time? They probably don't know, and be ready for that, because most people are not that self-aware. And it might be that they're self-driven and then they just don't know what the chaos is around them, or they just don't care about it. And so you have to, I actually had that experience this week with the company I was working with in Canada, where probably the loudest voice in the room is a super independent, and he knows it. And frankly, doesn't fuss him that much that he drives other people crazy. And so, we had to he won't mind me telling the story, but he calls his staff minions, right? I know the face. This is the face I had. And so we had to explain, and it was like this sort of inside joke with the founding team, because they're minions. They coined the term when they were minions.
Sure.
And so it was kind of this sort of inside joke. And I'm like, yeah, but nobody else shares that joke. And when you're in a position of authority, the inside joke becomes an insult. Right. So we had him change his language to, well, he was joking like valued employees, but, we're like, just say staff, man, just say staff. Because, he'd be like valued employees. I'm like, not helping. That doesn't actually help.
Yeah. See, independents have to make a really bad joke out of everything when they're corrected.
Right. Exactly. So, so it's really important not only to know your own culture type, but what culture type you're dealing with. Because if they're self-driven, they might not just be aware of the anxiety they're creating, or they might have to be convinced that it's in their best interest to downplay the anxiety they're creating. If they're a fixer and a stabilizer role. So the cool thing about addressing the toxic high performer, it doesn't have to be this, let's get in the room and duke it out and I have to tell her that she's being an ass. It's, hey, the way you do your work is creating stress for everybody. You might not care about that, but it affects the team. So let's talk about how to change the way, just tweak some things that you're doing so it doesn't make everyone nuts. So I think reframe it as, instead of this big confrontation, it's a sort of a logical progression of what's going on and how to fix it. I think that helps a lot. Sort of use the experience cube to figure out, okay, emotionally, this woman is pissing me off, but facts show me that she doesn't seem to be intentionally doing it, but it still rubs people the wrong way. So what do I want? So actually use that experience cube. I think that would really help.
Yeah. And when you're having that conversation with that person, say to them, listen, you're a really valued part of this team. I want you here. I need you here. And I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking they don't care about that. They just think they're in trouble. They don't think they care about that at that moment. But imagine not saying it. right? And then you just start right into the way you work really upsets people. Even that message just as a standalone without them knowing, listen, you're
like
valuable.
You.
I need you to show up to be here. And here are a few things that we need to work on so that you're a great part of this team, not just a good part of this team. So I always use that sort of that's also HR tip. A lot of times when you're a leader, this information comes to you from someone else. So, let's say Rachel works for this toxic high performer. Rachel comes to me and says, geez, I hate working for Alice. She's such a drag. And I feel like I'm her minion, and she's always giving me these sort of remedial tasks, and I just don't know how to get around it. Instead of me going in and saying, Alice, Rachel really doesn't like you. She says you're really hard to get along with, right? Because we don't do that. That's part of the reason we won't have these conversations in the first place. So replace that whole Rachel says with, you're a valued part of this team, and I want to give you some feedback. It doesn't really matter, because then they're going to say, well, Rachel said that, didn't she? Say, it doesn't matter who said it. These are things that I've noticed or other people on our team have noticed, and this will make you a better performer. So make it all about their value, their performance. It's not about other people. It's not about you. It's about them, their performance.
Yeah, and the company. Yeah, what's best for the company.
Okay. Do you treat toxic employees or coworkers the same, regardless of their performance levels? Do you treat toxic employees or coworkers the same?
I would say no, because if someone's toxic and they suck, then you fire them.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Somebody's like, yes.
Yeah. Right. I mean, that's it. I mean, I am the one that wants to hold on to people and figure out how to make them work in the team that you have. Because I think, frankly, it's much easier to take someone who is a little bit of a misfit and might be creating some stress in the team and help them figure out how to fix that than just firing them. But honestly, if they're not contributing in a way that is valued, and they're a pain in the butt, why would you invest your time and money into that person? So if they don't seem to care, why would you do the things?
Yeah, I would say, yes, do your due diligence and make sure that you know why. So
it's not just someone's pissed that they took their parking spot that morning.
Well, and I've been bit in the butt before by just somebody has poor performance and they're being toxic, and you talk about letting them go. But of course, the right thing to do before you let anyone go is bring them in and have a chat with them about their performance and their attitude. And then you find out, they say, well, my mom lives with me. She was just diagnosed with cancer. I'm trying to kind of sort out. I work nights every other week, and I'm trying to sort out how I'm going to get her there because I don't have anybody else to help me, or whatever the case is. And then you feel like a real idiot. So do the interview first and say, hey, I'm checking in. What's going on with you? Even if they've historically been toxic or low performers, say you're not really seeming like yourself. We usually see a little bit more spunk out of you or whatever. And so have that conversation first, but regardless of what their answer is, you set goals for them in performance and say, here's what I expect to see. You set goals for them in attitude. Here's what I expect to see. You take no excuses. You keep track of it. And if it doesn't improve over a certain amount of time that you set, 30, 60, 90 days, then you let them go, because that's not going to change. If they're going to choose, it's not hard to modify behavior.
You just have to choose it.
You have to choose it. And if they aren't going to choose it, then I wouldn't waste my time.
Well, the other thing too that came up this week with the Canadian company is it's very hard to fire people there without worrying about lots of things. And so they always make sure to have a probationary period with very specific guidelines. So 90 days. And if you're not achieving this, this, and this in 90 days, then it's much easier to release them back into the wild than it is if you just hire them without that probationary period. And then they're essentially full-time, long-term employees from day one. So it's definitely a strategy to consider, even if you're a very small team, that you're bringing someone on, you're not sure how they're going to deal with your culture and your vibe and your small group. Maybe just say that you get a 90-day transition period and then a probationary period. And I've also heard, people get hired and, the very first day they're on the job, they're completely different than their interview. And that's how you can protect yourself from that sort of best behavior on the interview to how they really are day in, day out. So
Also great advice if you're in a union environment. Now, of course, probationary periods have to be negotiated with the union reps, but if you have it and they've allowed it into the contract with your union employees, utilize it. There's so many companies that have probationary periods that are scared to use them. They don't want to use them. If you're going to have one, somebody really likes that. If you're going to have a probationary period, use it, use it, use it. It can protect you from so much, like Rachel said, whether you're union, non-union, Canadian, American, whatever. If you're going to have it in your policy, use it. If you're not going to use it, take it out of your handbook, because it becomes,
or put it in if you don't have it too.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to include it in something as something new. Because the implication is, to me, the way that you explain it is, I want the best people, you included, to be around for the long haul in my company. And we want to make sure that everyone's a good fit. And so, like, as a federal employee, I had a 90-day probationary period because, of course, most people that go into federal service never leave. So you want to make darn sure that they're going to be a good employee as much as you can. So,
yeah. Okay, last question. How do I know if someone is creating toxicity in my work environment? Okay, this is the analogy that's coming to mind, because I have been sick this week. Thank you for graciously not
rescheduling.
Well, you didn't get to choose, but thank you for allowing me to reschedule, and the nice wishes I got from everybody on the note that Shelley put up. Anyway, on the mend, I think.
On the menu thing. And before you launch into the story, I actually have a call at the bottom of the hour. So I'm going to sneak into the house. Okay. Unless we're going to wrap up in 3 minutes.
I think we can wrap up in 3 minutes.
Okay, let's do it.
But it kind of like, when you're getting sick and you're like, in your head, you're like, I'm not getting sick. I'm not getting sick. I know my kid is sick, or I know my husband, wife, friend, whomever, whatever is sick, but I'm not getting that. And your nose kind of tingles and the back of your throat itches, or if you got like stomach flu,
lymph node thing.
Yeah, or you got the stomach bug and you're like, I don't feel hungry, and that's weird, but I'm not sick. I'm not sick. I'm not sick. Toxic employees. It's the same thing. In the back of your head, you're just thinking, I don't have a toxic employee. No, it's not really that bad.
It's not that bad.
Somebody will come in and say, oh my gosh, dealing with Jimmy is blah, 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 blah. And then they leave and you think, okay, yeah, that's bad. Okay, that's bad. Oh, but it's not that bad. Nah, we couldn't. We have a great culture here. We couldn't have a toxic employee. If you were talking yourself out of it, then you have a toxic employee. That would be what I would say.
Yeah, and you have to be a little careful. I remember I had an amazing project manager once. She was just a total ass kicker. Technically, she's amazing. But I look back and she's probably super, super deep stabilizer. And man, we used to say that she had blind spots, right? Because I wasn't at her level. I was one level below her. So she was like, oh yeah, that guy is a total jerk, but she never says anything. And like she always acts like everything's fine with him. And so that's her blind spot, right? Well, I think basically she was just didn't have the courage to address it. Mm-hmm. And so if you're talking yourself out of it and literally everyone else is making excuses for your behavior, because you can, like, this woman was absolutely well liked and adored, but then she let employees get away with bad behavior that would make our lives harder. And so we stopped really, it was like this weird, instead of blaming him, we really blamed her, because she's the one that's supposed to hold him accountable and to the rest of us. And so it's just, if one person says you have a tail, you probably don't. But if two people say you have a tail, including yourself, you probably should check.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And best advice right before we leave is, if somebody gives you that advice or provides objective perspective, don't be defensive first.
Right.
Ask a question. If they know and love you, they're not telling you to be a jerk. It's because they care about you.
Yeah, for sure. And that probably took a lot of courage for them to even say that, especially if they're order tolerant. So, try to honor their thoughts about what's going on, because they're probably trying to help you more than anything. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Right,
we're off again. Lead powerfully.
Change the world. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Trying to end.